All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going into the Necropolis, and we're going to be talking about the Karina's challenges, the 10-year anniversary challenges, and we're starting off with the Masterful Mutants challenge, which begins with Sauron, hits kind of a checkpoint with America Chavez, and then finishes off with the Psycho Man. And so what I want to do is a bit different. At this point, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the fights individually, and a lot of times that can be somewhat disheartening, as you may not have the champions that some of those creators have. And so you might think to yourself, oh, I'm not ready to do this challenge because I don't have the champions. My roster isn't where it should be. And so what I want to do is provide you with as many options as I can think of to get through this. This is probably one of the easier challenges because you have access to the entire mutant class. They synergize really well, and there ultimately is a lot of options for you. And so I think this is, if you're a bit of a smaller account, this would be a good challenge to start with, as there's plenty of champions I think that can get you through it. Now, starting off with the path node. Right, so each path has a unique node, or at least each half path does. And so for this particular one, it's the slip and roll node. The defender has a 50% chance to evade your medium attacks. So that's something to watch out for. This doesn't activate while they're stunned, so you can have a successful parry, start your combo with a medium attack, and as long as you finish out with light attacks, there's no chance of them evading. So that's just something to think about as you go about building your team. There's a few of the champions that can counter the evade as a whole, but to be honest with you, being able, as long as you can parry, and you won't really have to worry about it too much. So that's something really nice. So what I want to talk about, just to start, guys, is your team composition. The only champion I feel like that is necessary that you have on your team, and that's simply just to make a particular fight a little bit easier for you, and that's White Magneto. White Magneto can give a synergy to any champion that enters the fight that allows their parry stuns to become passive instead of act as debuffs, right? And so that fight is specifically for Hitmonkey, as Hitmonkey is capable of purifying debuffs, and he does it a lot throughout the fight. That's kind of his specific node, is that he gains that ability more regularly, and so that's something you need to definitely watch out for. But when you have the White Magneto synergy, you can parry, and as long as you attack him while stunned, he will neither purify the stun, nor will he evade you throughout the fight. So that's something I would say is kind of a necessary thing if you want to keep your resource management down, like using less revives. Otherwise, what you really want to consider is who or how many champions you're going to have that are like main clearers, and then a couple champions that can bring synergies that maybe make that champion more powerful. So a few of those team compositions, like the one I have here is with Colossus. It required the least amount of resources for me, so I went ahead and ranked up my 7-star Colossus just to rank 2. And the rest of these champions are basically nothing. I don't even use them throughout the entire course of the challenge. They're all just here as synergies for Colossus. He can do every single one of these fights. If you haven't seen it yet, you can check out Swadea's channel, and I'm pretty sure he does this itemless with Colossus. I mean, maybe some health potions or something, but he solos every single fight with Colossus. His is a rank 3, and it's definitely doable, guys. So that's something to consider if you've got a 7-star Colossus. This team works out really great. They synergize to basically maximize the amount of armors he gets. That way he does more damage, and he essentially just beats down his opponents. And the fights are pretty basic. After that, guys, a couple more champions I would consider as main clearers for this challenge would be Storm. So the OG Storm with the Apocalypse synergy. So that team is going to require that you bring Storm, Apocalypse, and Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister allows for Apocalypse to create or basically make horsemen without having to even enter a fight. So that's why you bring both of those two. That way you can make Storm a horseman right away, and she can kind of be your main clearer throughout the entirety of the challenge. After that, you have champions like Strife. Onslaught can do many of the fights with ease. If you've got a 7-star Onslaught, if you've got a 6-star Onslaught, great as well. Other champions would include, I think I might have mentioned Strife. You can also use Professor X. I would say he's a bit more of the high skill variant. He does really well if you can manage his prowess well enough and stack him up really high. His special attacks will hit incredibly hard. He's also one of the champions that can prevent the evade as long as he's got 25 of his own Cerebro charges. But he's also nice to bring along for the synergies, as he kind of helps out a lot of the mutant class. So something to consider when you're thinking about the team that you're building. Plenty of options in the mutant class that all do exceptionally well and can definitely get you through. If there's any questions on champions, guys, please feel free to ask as well, and we can go over them. If there's champions that you brought that I didn't mention, feel free to mention them. You know, because maybe that's a champion someone's got, and it'll help them out. So what we're going to do next is actually just kind of touch on each fight just a little bit. That way you kind of know what you're getting into with each one. So starting off with Sauron, like normal, Sauron can go unblockable every so often. In this particular fight, the node is more specific, where whenever he's hit critically, he gains prowess, and every time if he is unblockable, that unblockable gets paused. So he can be unblockable for a bit longer, but for the most part, as long as you're avoiding him from hitting you, right, and easier said than done, right? And you can kind of keep him against the wall, and as long as you learn to dex the special one, it's a pretty easy fight. What's also nice is that he's the first fight, and so you can get in there and practice and practice and practice until you kind of get it down. Hitmonkey, again, this is why you're bringing White Magneto, and that's just so that you can put that synergy on whichever champion you're using, and that will give you the passive parry stuns. And then as long as you want to keep to attacking him only when he's stunned, because otherwise he has a chance to evade just as a part of his own kit. Every time he's knocked down in this fight, he gains those abilities, and then he also gains them like every 8 seconds. So, you know, he's going to be doing it all the time. I would stick to just attacking him while he's stunned. America Chavez is a tough fight. You've really got to manage the AI here, unfortunately. You want to keep her from throwing as many heavy attacks as you possibly can. That way she's not gaining any of her dimensions. And especially the third one, because that's going to make her special attacks unblockable, and it's the special 2 that you want to watch out for. If you can dex the special 2, then really not as much to worry about here, and you can kind of just fight as normal. But for the most part, you want to keep her from getting dimensions. She'll use special ones on repeat if you can keep doing that, and you just whittle her down that way. Now, Airwalker is a point of pain for a lot of people. He's a place that you can really get stuck, because you really want to get this solo if you can. So essentially, he's got passive power gain, and every 15 seconds he has a chance to gain his own Galactus buff, which basically regenerates his health almost completely. He regenerates quite a lot of health. As soon as that happens, to be honest with you, a good strategy is to just quit out of the fight. Like if you've got him down to 50% and he gains that buff, you can just quit out of the fight and start it over. But the painful part is that the passive power gain that he has will increase, and so he'll be throwing specials far more often, and you've got to somehow fit in knockdowns to prevent him from getting his Galactus buff. So that's the tough part here. So some of the champions that can help out, I mean, Apocalypse himself can get stuns on his second light attack into block in case you need to get a knockdown. Professor X kind of uses his heavy attacks a lot anyway, and so that does more knockdowns. Onslaught is, I would say, somewhat troublesome, as his special attacks are really long, and the knockdown doesn't count until the special attack is over. With the heavy attack, it seems like it happens as soon as you land the heavy attack, so that's something to keep in mind. That's just what I noticed when I was doing it. So watch out for Airwalker, but as long as I would prioritize knocking him down to prevent the Galactus buff, and then when he keep him to a special 1 and block the second part of the special 1. You don't want to get the Dark Tide debuff on you, otherwise the armor breaks will start to damage you, and you'll just end up dying that way. So tough fight. But just keep focused, get the knockdowns, block the special ones, and then walk your way through, essentially. Captain Britain basically will, every time you attack her, you get exhaustion debuffs on you. And then when she uses a special attack, if you have an exhaustion debuff, she will purify it, and then you will go into reverse controls. So you will get exhaustion debuffs a lot. So good rule of thumb is more than likely you're going to be dodging her special attacks with reverse controls. So don't let that catch you off guard, because she gains prowess throughout the fight, and her special attacks can essentially one-shot you. But they're really not too hard to dex. It's just knowing, are you going to have normal controls or reverse controls? So just pay attention to the exhaustion debuffs, whether they're timing out or how many you have. And that way you can know if she's got a special attack, you can bait it out a bit more easily, and then you'll be pretty much golden from there. Wiccan is another tough fight for a lot of people. He has regen, but something to keep in mind, a lot of people don't seem to be aware of this. They fear the regen, but he regenerates 100% of all energy damage dealt to him. So if you're using a champion, for example, like Colossus, who doesn't deal energy damage at all, the heal is really not that bad. So that's something to keep in mind. If that's something you're worried about, Colossus is a great option for that. Champions that don't really use a lot of energy damage. Unfortunately, most of the mutants do, so that's the troublesome part here. Colossus is also immune to the Incinerate, so pretty solid choice there. I would say if you are using someone who does energy damage, try to keep Wiccan to the special 2 and learn to dex it as properly as you can, and then you can get yourself through this fight pretty darn easily. After that, the final fight is Psycho Man, and to be honest with you, on this one, throughout this whole challenge, I think I used 4 or 5 revives, and like 4 of them were here on Psycho Man. And that's simply because against mutant champions, Psycho Man's concussion debuffs have their potency increased by like 75%. So he'll be failing a lot of your abilities or preventing them. You might not be able to stun him when you need to. And with this fight, there's prompts that you got to worry about. So you've either got to knock him down when it says to, use a special attack, or block a hit when it says to. So that's the challenge here, is you're pretty much just playing the prompts, but a lot of what he does to the mutant class makes those prompts a little bit harder to fulfill. So keep that in mind when you're doing this challenge. Those are some of the roadblocks, that you could run into. But if there's other champions that you guys have thought of that might work for this challenge and you have a question about it, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to check it out and we can talk about it. And if there's anything else, let me know. But best of luck in the Battle Realm, my friends.